So good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Nailing the Basics, a guide to social media and community management. My name is Penny Sullivan and I'm a Sector Sustainability Coordinator at Community Legal Centres Queensland. Before we get started today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're holding the webinar. In Brisbane, we meet on the lands of the Turrbal and the Yagara people. In Sydney, where Anastasia is located, it's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I wish to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders continue to play in our society. As this webinar is also being viewed by people across Queensland and Australia, I'd also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the lands throughout the country and extend a warm welcome to any First Nations people listening today. Today, we're delighted to welcome Anastasia Simons, who's the Brand and Communications Manager for Are You OK? And she'll be talking to us about the elements of her social media playbook. That includes defining your purpose on social media, knowing your audience, and creating content pillars that connect to your organisation's objectives. Anastasia will also discuss planning to build an engaged and active community on your social media channels using community management. I'll let Anastasia tell you a bit more about herself when I hand over in a moment. Today's webinar is being recorded and we'll have the recording available to download later today or tomorrow. The PowerPoints and other materials have been emailed out to everyone who registered, and they're also available to download from our website and from the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel. There are two ways you can ask questions. You can press the button that looks like a hand and we'll see a hand go up at our end. We can unmute you so you can ask your question. But our preferred approach is for you to type your question into the question box on the control panel, and we'll read your question out so that everyone can hear it. We'll hold questions until the end of the presentation, but feel free to type them in as you think of them. So I'll now hand over to Anastasia and talk to you again at the end of the session. Thanks so much, Anastasia. Over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction. I'd like to start by saying hi to everyone and welcoming you to this presentation, where I'll be talking to you a little bit about a social media playbook. We'll go into detail of what that is and how to build one as well. But I guess to start off, a little bit of background on myself. So I'm the Brand and Communications Manager for Are You OK? I've worked with the organisation for the last 5 years, and prior to that, I worked in various campaign roles in both the disability and political space. So I've spent most of my working career in communications and marketing. I'm always happy to stay in contact and answer any questions that you might have after the fact, and you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn or via my email, which is available in the presentation that's been sent to you all as well. So what I first want to do is, when you're thinking about getting involved with social media, for some of you, you might already have a strong presence and curated presence, and for others, you might be considering expanding your current social media use or exploring new channels and new ways. So a couple of things that I always encourage people to consider is, do you have the time to manage your social media channels? And do you have the time to moderate your social media channels? So similar to everyone who's attending today, I work in a sensitive space, and there are a number of people that connect with our organisation who do require, I guess, quite timely responses, individuals who are in crisis or in need of support as well. So what I would strongly encourage everyone to be able to do is to answer yes to both of these before either starting on social media or growing their presence as well. So I'm just going to skip over this one because the videos never work particularly effectively. But what I encourage everyone to do is to take what I say today with a grain of salt. This presentation is being prepared from the perspective of Are You OK? So we're a national suicide prevention charity. Our vision is a world where we're all connected and protected from suicide. And we go about achieving this by encouraging everyone to connect and empowering them with the skills and confidence to support anyone who may be struggling with life. So everything that we've developed connects to our organisational objectives, which are around education, awareness, and behaviour change. So for your organisation, it might be different depending on whether you're speaking to clients, potential supporters, or the general community as well. But what has allowed us to, I guess, nail the basics as a small organisation. So Are You OK nationally has a team of 12 and a marketing team of 2, is having a social media playbook. I love the creativity that comes with creating a presence on social media, but it's the processes and the structure that allows you to really take advantage of that creativity. And a playbook is one of the ways that we do this. So what is it? It's a living document that outlines why social media is so important for your brand and organisation, what you want to achieve and how you plan to do this. It's a really useful document for communicating with other people in your organisation, particularly individuals who may not be as literate in social media or may not understand why it's such an important communication tool. So what could go into a social media playbook? Who you are and what you do, why you're on social media, what success is going to look like for your organisation, who you're talking to, so your audience, and how you're going to talk to them. Your asset library, so these are the images, the content pieces, the videos, your community management guidelines, absolutely vital for organisations like ours. This is about how you communicate with users who reach out with questions or comments. And your paid social principles. So if you are doing advertising, making sure that you've got some principles that govern your strategy for that. And I'm going to run through each of these in today's presentation. So where it's really important to begin is who you are as an organisation. So to come up with your elevator pitch, your one-sentence summary of your organisation that considers your mission, your vision, and summarises any other vital considerations. When developing this, you might consider looking at existing documentation. So if you've got brand guidelines and communication guidelines, they can be a really useful source of this information. You can look at your website and other communication tools, and you can chat to your leadership team. When I started at Are You OK, we were a team of 5. And so developing this playbook required consultation with our executive team and also with, I guess, key supporters of the organisation, people that had contributed to the organisation strategy to date. And at the same time that we were developing this playbook, we were also finalising our brand guidelines and our guide to supporting Are You OK as well. So what might this look like? For Are You OK? It explains what we are, which is a national suicide prevention charity dedicated to encouraging and empowering everyone to ask, are you okay if anyone's struggling with life? Our vision is a world where we're all connected and are protected from suicide. And something that's a vital consideration is that we work alongside other mental health and suicide prevention organisations to ensure those who are struggling to find the care and support that they need. So once you've worked out who you are, you can start to look at why you're going to focus on social media. What do you want to achieve through this? And start defining your strategic goals. So I usually put them under 3 headings: awareness, attitude, and action. So awareness is, who do you need to be aware of your organisation? Who needs to know about you? Who needs to know about your work and what you're doing? And what exactly do you need them to be aware of? So that could be different for clients versus potential donors and supporters. For us, it's quite different for the various audiences that we've got. We've got 6, and I'll go into a bit more detail about who they are and what each of these headings might mean for them. Attitude is, what do you need them to start thinking? And action is, what are you empowering them to do or asking them to do? What is considered a successful activity? And so this defines, this can define your content and various other things that you'll do on your social channels as well. So you know where you want to go, but it's also really important to assess where you're at currently. So thinking about who's currently aware, what they know, what they're currently thinking and doing. And by doing that comparison, you're able to understand where the gaps might be and where you might need to focus your time, energy, and resources as well. So for us, what are we trying to achieve? Awareness is really important for our organisation. We're currently at about 89% awareness, but we do know that there's still a lag in terms of people's understanding of how to have that conversation. So for us, being able to understand who currently has that information in terms of demographics and who doesn't is really important. To understand what people are currently thinking. So what do they think of our organisation? What do they think of the approach? How do they feel about broaching these conversations? And what are they currently doing? Are they having these conversations? Are they completing the actions that are key to our organisation? And so what we do is we map this out on a 12-monthly basis, and we review it quarterly with, of course, more regular reports being submitted. So once we've worked out our goals on social media, they can start to feed into who we're talking to. So you've already started to define, we need to talk to our clients, we need to talk to these people. And now we're in a section where we're going to break that down a little bit further. So this can inform content personas, which I'll go into a little bit more detail of shortly, your content creation and content targeting. So what are some things that you might consider including key demographic information? So think about age, income, and attitudes. Their social media content consumption habits. So this means what channels are they using? Where do they like to receive information? And what kind of information do they want to receive on those channels? You might find that's quite different on, say, LinkedIn versus Facebook and Instagram. You might find that people want to consume articles that your organisation is producing in different channels. Going back again to your goals, what you need them to know, think, and do. So there's awareness, attitude, and action, and where they're currently at as well. And something that's really important is to consider what percentage of your organisation falls into this segment. So for Are You Okay, we have 6 content personas, and one of them is the skeptics. Now, skeptics are a really loud voice on social media. They're the individuals that aren't convinced that our organisation is making an impact or that our approach may not be the right one. And so while they might be the loudest voice, it doesn't necessarily mean that we should put all our time, energy, and effort into them, because our primary audience is a help giver, the person who's looking to support someone who's struggling with life. And that help giver makes up 85% of our audience. So if I put all of my time, energy, and effort into talking to the naysayers, I would actually be doing a disservice to our primary audience. So how can you segment your audience? Consider who's already connecting with your brand, the channels they're using, the content they're engaging with. And to get this information, it can help to do a bit of a deep dive. So have a look at your existing analytics. That could be on your social media website and other communication channels. And consider going a bit broader. So doing some surveys, focus groups, and customer interviews. For us, we focused on doing the focus groups. We ran them in-house, which was a bit of a trying process. I won't say we nailed it the first time. We actually had to abandon the strategy after the first workshop and rework it entirely because we hadn't structured the questions effectively. So strongly encourage putting the time, energy, and effort into preparing for these particular focus groups to ensure that you get the information that you need. And we worked with a third-party provider to facilitate these. So one of our low bono supporters is Census. They manage our website, and they also provided support in facilitating these focus groups and customer interviews. And I spent a lot of time talking to other individuals who work in similar roles to me across the mental health and suicide prevention space. That was really helpful for learning what worked for them, what approach they took as well. And I really have enjoyed continuing to maintain those relationships so that I can always learn from best practice and how other people are approaching this. So strongly encourage everyone to connect with people in similar roles. So what might a customer segment look like? So I spoke about the help giver earlier. So the help giver makes up the vast majority of the Are You Okay audience. And they're the people that want to provide support to someone who's struggling. So they want to be confident that they're saying and doing the right thing and going with the right approach. They've got a strong sense of duty and friendship and want to do what they can to relieve the pain and stress. However, they don't always know how to look after themselves when supporting others. So self-care needs to be reprioritized. You'll see on this image a picture of a lovely lady, Lisa. So one thing that I also did with our audience personas was that I connected them to real people who engaged with our organisation. And what this helped do was to personalise it for my colleagues who don't work in this space full time. By having someone that they can connect it to, when I talked about this particular persona or segment, they were able to understand a little bit more of who we were talking to and why we might take a particular approach with our content if we were trying to speak to this particular individual. So what are their goals? They want to find information that they can act on and speaks to their needs and the needs of the person they want to help. They want to get their friend or loved one to open up and accept that they're not themselves. They want to start the conversation well, especially the first one. They want to help their loved one overcome their issues, and they want to understand when it's okay to look after themselves. What are their motivations? To take away the distress or pain of a friend. They've got a sense of obligation. They want to be seen as reliable, and they want to give back. They've got a sense of a need to be part of the community. What are some of their frustrations? So they felt like there was a lack of specific and tangible information. They didn't know where to start the search for information or how to start the conversation. They didn't understand the signs. They didn't understand how to respond. They felt a little bit overwhelmed, and they were feeling like they weren't able to help their friend or they could make it worse. And they were concerned that the broader support wasn't available if someone did need professional support. So by understanding these particular segments, we could then go back through our goals to make sure that we were talking to them effectively. So because we understood them, we could start to develop our content lens. We were able to think about how we were going to engage our audience, so our various segments, our segments being the help giver, the help seeker, the skeptic. Help giver is the person providing support, help seeker being the individual looking for support, the skeptic being an individual who isn't sure that Are You OK is making a difference or having an impact, the proactive survivor. So people with lived experience are often looking to give back or make a difference in this space. The volunteer, so these are individuals that are going above and beyond in the support of Are You OK? They might host an event, they might download core resources and share them with their community. And our activists, so these are the ambassadors and individuals that go above and beyond to share the message in their community. So when developing this lens, we wanted to make sure that we had an overarching approach to our content that would speak to more broadly to all of our audiences. So what we know about them is that they're conscious and passionate Are You OK advocates, or the vast majority is. So they may not have lived experience, but they know and respect the work that we do. If they love something, they'll interact and let us know. And if we miss the mark, they'll let us know as well. So it's really important that all of our content is positive, human, educational, and practical. So positive, we want to be optimistic, uplifting, and encouraging. We want to always end with a note of hope. We want to be human. We're approachable, conversational, and warm. And that covers both the content that we're producing and the responses that we have through community management. We're educational, we're well-informed, we're useful and worthwhile. We provide practical information to people that they can apply in their own worlds and their own conversations too. So we've got our broader content lens, and our tone of voice is really important to break it down even further. So we want to ensure that all communications are in line with this tone of voice to maintain consistency and authenticity. So that means thinking about how you're approaching things like your newsletter, your website, and other communication channels too. so that if someone continues down the funnel, so if they continue to progress towards taking the ultimate action for your organization, that all of your communication channels are supporting this. So for us, we're encouraging, we're here to increase people's skills and confidence to support those struggling with life and want to inspire them to seek the information that they need. We're experienced, we know what we're talking about, and we want our audience to feel like they can trust what we're saying. We're enthusiastic, we're excited to share our insights and to start a discussion with our audience. We're engaged, we're quick to reply, and are interested in what our audience has to say, whether it's good or bad, and we're caring. We care about our audience. We want to ensure that they feel heard and supported on our channels. So using our content lens and of course our tone of voice, we can now start to develop our content mix. So what we want to do is create some pillars or key types of content that we share on a regular basis to connect with our audiences. So for Are You Okay? Because we know our audience really well, we know what we're trying to achieve on our social media channels, we're able to define what information we will put out regularly to help us do this. So these are kind of the themes and the key messages almost that you're sharing on social media. So for us, they're conversation heroes. So these are stories of real people who've either had a conversation with someone that they're worried about or someone asked them the question when they needed it most. Conversation tips, so these are the practical information on when and how to have a conversation with someone you're worried about and how to connect with those around you. Internal resources, so these are resources targeted at specific demographics, campaign settings and audiences that are designed to build people's skills and confidence to support those around them who may be struggling with life. Our audience want to feel uplifted and inspired. They want to enjoy themselves a little bit on our channel. So it's really important that we share content that's inspirational, fun, and gives them those feels that are a little emotional, tug on the heartstrings. Facts and news. So particularly for our skeptics and our proactive survivors, being able to position our impact and our place in suicide prevention and mental health is really important. And the sector spotlight is equally important. So when we wrote the definition of our organisation, demonstrating that we work with other mental health and suicide prevention providers is really important. And so highlighting the work that they do, highlighting where people can go for support is really vital too. So this all connects to our target audiences. It delivers on our organisation's mission and vision, and it delivers on our social media goals as well. So once you know what you're saying, it's important to think about when you're going to say it as well. So what we've done is we've created a baseline rhythm to help us understand what needs to be published daily, weekly and monthly. So not every single content pillar will go out every single day. It's really helpful to plan out your content. So for us, we're a small organisation. There's 2 of us in the team. So having a buffer is really important because if one of us is off sick or on leave, we've got a bit of a buffer so we don't lose our rhythm. And by having these content pillars, we're also able to build a content library. So because we know what resonates most with our audience and will help us achieve our goals, whenever inspiration strikes or we see something that inspires a content piece, we're able to take that, turn that into a piece of content, pop it in our bank, and we can use that whenever we're preparing the next round of content. So for us, we try to have 2 to 3 weeks absolutely locked down, and to have a quarterly calendar. So our quarterly calendar will highlight what we're going to share when, and this is really helpful for communicating with the rest of your organisation, so that announcements and resources aren't all being shared on the same day. People aren't getting inundated. You've kind of planned it out in advance as well. And so while it's important to have a baseline rhythm, you can intensify. So for us, Are You Okay Day is a national day of action. It's what we're most well known for. And in the build up to the day, we communicate more regularly with our audience. So we're comfortable intensifying during peak periods too. Something that's absolutely vital for UOK is community management. So we make sure that we have a strategy around this because working in the suicide prevention and mental health space, we do have people in crisis reach out to our organisation. So our strategy outlines what requires a green, yellow and red response. So green is our existing moderation guidelines can be utilised. Yellow is we can utilise the existing moderation guidelines, but this may need further monitoring and may need to be escalated. And red is it requires escalation. It needs to be reviewed and considered by other individuals in the organisation. We've also got a really clearly defined escalation process. So if someone reaches out on our channels in distress and requires immediate support, or if someone says something negative about our organisation that could impact our work, we have an escalation process in place. And under that process, we've got the individual and team roles. So who in the organisation needs to hear about this escalation in order for us to respond appropriately. And of course, we document anything that we escalate as well to make sure that we're meeting all of our legal requirements too. Something that's really important and that we've spent a lot of time developing is example responses. So we've got our base moderation guidelines, which outline what we might say in different circumstances. So what do you say if someone says they're generally not okay? What do you say if someone needs immediate support? What differences are you okay making? Where can I get merchandise? Where can I find this resource? We've got example responses for all of those. What we also do is when we've escalated something or we've had a comment from someone that has required a bespoke response, we make sure that we save these as well, so that when that comment comes up again in future, we've got some pre-written responses that we can refer to, which can help guide what we're putting together for this individual. So really helpful to structure this all into a document with your community rules and guidelines, your guidelines for interaction time. So how quickly does this person need to be responded to? And make sure that, of course, it comes back to your tone of voice that you've developed in your content lens, and that it ensures that you will remain authentic. So for us, we also do paid social media campaigns. So these, I think it's really important to have principles for this. And the reason I think it's so important is that there have been times in my work where someone has gone, I need you to boost this. I need you to put this out. You need to promote this. And it may not necessarily be a piece of content that ties to our overarching organisational or social media objectives. So having some principles can really help guide that conversation that I have with that individual. And also ensure that we get a strong return on investment. Being a charity, if we put money anywhere, we want to make sure that, we're maximising the return for our organisation. So any social media paid campaign that we do must have a purpose. So it needs to develop on our social media or wider marketing objectives. All ads need to have a single call to action. And for best performance, we optimise the campaigns to the objective and the content. So this means that we have a more lengthy discussion with those individuals that are requesting a paid campaign to ensure that the content we're creating meets their objectives, but also in the most effective way possible. So we pay to play. Our budget is used to target and reach specific audience and deliver results that we cannot get through our organic content. So if we believe something can be achieved through organic content, then of course we won't pop our budget against this, and we'll try and exhaust all avenues of organic before approaching paid. And we test. It's really important to review and optimize your campaigns, both for that particular campaign, but also for the future. You can learn a lot about what works with your audience and what generates results, so that when you look at doing it in future, you've got some existing information and reports that are really helpful for that. So what are the 3 things that I hope you take away today? Firstly, know why you're doing social. Secondly, know what success looks like. And thirdly, know your audience. So thank you, everyone. That brings the formal part of my presentation to a close. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. So if you're able to pop them into the questions section, that would be really helpful. So how do you evaluate? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's Penny here. Thanks so much, Anastasia. That was excellent. Have you can see the questions, can you, that are coming through?
I can see 3 there at the moment.
Yes. So if you want to just respond to them as they come through, that would be awesome.
Lovely. So Angela asked, how do you evaluate these goals? And that's a great question, Angela. So we're just going to pop back to our goals. Yeah, so this is, there's a couple of different ways that we do this. So we do analysis of our channels. So this is looking at our social media performance. We use a tool called Sprout Social to help us assess this. Another tool called Digivisor, and we also do in-channel analytics. And that gives us an understanding of some of the key demographics of who's currently aware and engaging with us on social media. So for our broader personas, we also get this information from a national omnibus survey. So this is an all-of-population survey that maps people's attitudes and behaviours in relation to Are You OK? And that's conducted quarterly. So we of course do the comparison on social media as well as on a national level, and it's really helpful to compare those 2. Other things that we do is that we split the quantitative and the qualitative data as well. So it's really helpful to, yes, have all of the numbers, but also look at the type of comments that are happening on your channels to really dive into people's attitudes, thoughts, and perspectives on the content that you're creating and whether it's helping them take the action that they need. So for an example of that would be on our conversation tips, people might say, that's really helpful. That's really useful. They might share a story of how they're going to use it on the weekend. They might make a commitment to take a particular action and activity. And analysing that is just as important as looking at the kind of broader picture, because it gives us an understanding of which content pieces in particular are speaking most effectively to our audience and are getting them to take the actions that we ultimately want them to take. We do also do a lot of tracking from social media to our website, which is our primary place where people can find information on Are You OK? How to have that conversation and how to share that message. And being able to track that journey is really important for us as well. The next question is, do you use any scheduling tools? And we do. So when I first started at Are You OK? We didn't. It was a constant diary reminder to frantically post it at the set time. Now we use a tool called Sprout Social to schedule on most platforms. There's a couple that it doesn't cover, and for those ones we still have to do in-channel scheduling. What we find really helpful about the tool that we use at the moment as well is that it gives us an understanding of the times that our audience are interacting with us most frequently. So this will show you the spikes in the day. Do people want to get information from your organisation in the morning, on their lunch breaks, in the evenings? Is it on the commute home from work? And knowing this can help you build that rhythm as well. So strongly recommend looking into utilising one of these tools. But if you can't, you can still get that information in channel on most platforms. It just requires a little bit more of a dive. So the next question is, do you think it's possible for volunteers to run social media with management support? And I strongly believe that they can, yes. I think, what I strongly encourage any organisation that's working with volunteers to do is to have guiding principles in place. So make sure you've got your social media playbook, that you've invested some time as an organisation in this. And if you've got those guiding principles for people, they can take that document and they can run with it. because you've already worked out what they need to be saying, what they need to be doing, who they're talking to, all that information's there, and then they can do the work of moderating, talking to people online, and of course creating that content as well. So I do think, Zoe, that it is possible to have volunteers run social media with management support. What is really important with volunteers is your escalation processes. So make sure that you've got those really clearly outlined, because if there's an issue that arises that does require a response from a staff member or management, that they understand where the boundaries lie as well. So Melanie asked, if we don't have a dedicated marketing person and no budget, is it still important to have a social media presence? And then Melanie also questions whether it's right to not have an online presence. That's an interesting question, Melanie, and I do think it depends on the organisation and the organisation's objectives. So I won't say blanket that no, you shouldn't have a social media presence. I do think that the structure that I've outlined here today, you don't need to be a marketing person to do it. And I will disclose that I'm not a formally educated marketer. I didn't study marketing at university. I did economics, which is a very different world, and geography, neither of which I've ended up using in my professional career. But what I have done is a lot of research online. And so I don't think you need to be a dedicated marketing person, but do a little bit of research online to find those systems and those processes that can help you structure your presence so that it helps you achieve your goals. You don't need a budget. When I started at Are You OK, we had no budget. We do now, just because we've grown a lot as an organisation in the last few years, but there's so much that you can do without it. It will require a little bit more work to build that audience and build that presence, but strongly encourage dedicating the time either through volunteers or staff who might have other responsibilities as well. I'm a sole trader and work as an interpreter. Could you recommend any free websites people can use to promote and publish rates and services? I'm not too certain on this particular one in terms of free websites, other than to look at ones that fit with the sector that you're working in. There's a couple of hubs that freelancers will often post on to connect with others as well. So there's, in terms of who we end up working with, in terms of freelancers and the like, they tend to come through professional recommendations. So someone else who works in our space has recommended this individual because they've done some work with them, or they have a connection directly with Are You OK? That's where a lot of our support has come from. Something that's just come up from just in my mind from the questions that we've got today, something that we called upon a lot was low bono and pro bono support. So we're very lucky to have some professional organisations that financially support Are You OK? And calling upon their expertise was really helpful when building these documents. As I said earlier, I'm not formally educated in this space, so being able to work with people who have a bit more experience and understanding of these things has been really helpful for me. So I strongly recommend considering who in your organisation or personal network you could reach out to work with on these on the guidelines for how your organisation approaches social media can be really helpful. So strongly recommend doing a little bit of an audit of your network too, and of course sign up to lots of mailing lists as well. That's somewhere where I get a lot of information too. So I'm on mailing lists for agencies and things outside of my space and my sector. And the reason I think that's really important is that it keeps me open to new ideas and new ways of doing things that we may not have considered, because it may not be something that people are doing yet in the sector and the space. And something that I'm really proud of with Are You OK is that we're very innovative in our approach to social media and digital. we try to do things differently and create new ways to educate people as well. So that's all of the questions. Oh, one more question has come through. What are your best tips for making video on no budget? Great question, and one that I actually had to deal with when I first started at Are You Okay? And so something that I think is really important is, or something that I found really helpful was that I get a personal development budget each year. It's a small amount of money, but I allocated that to doing a course which taught me how to edit. And that was really helpful because these days, phones and everything like that are amazing. And you can use them to shoot relatively high quality film. But by doing that course, I was able to understand how to cut and curate content. And I use a tool called Premiere Pro primarily, but you can do a reasonable job in some of the free tools that are offered online. There's a number of different ones that you can use to kind of cut the content. I think it's okay not to, when approaching this, if you don't have the budget to hire a professional editor, don't expect your output to look as schmick as a professional editor. It's completely okay to not do that. So something that we've done in-house this year is an Ask the Expert series, which we shot over Zoom. And the reason we shot it over Zoom, we could see what they look like when they adjusted their camera. They could see us, and we were able to click record, and everything would get recorded. It was a really easy way for us to do an interview, which we'd mapped out exactly what we wanted the finished product to look like, and we asked questions that facilitated that. And then when it came to the edit, it was quite easy because the whole interview had been structured that way. Everyone had been able to see themselves. We tested the audio. Everyone had a stable connection, and we were able to do a very simple cut and edit with a simple start and end frame. And you can build templates for those starts and end frames. A start frame is the graphics that you see at the beginning of a video, and an end frame is the graphics or logos that you see at an end of a video. So they're kind of my top tips for making video on no budget. And I probably will think of some more when I come off the chat, but I hope that's been helpful for everyone. Tyson asks, if you already have social media and don't have much of a plan yet, do you recommend not posting until you create a plan, or keep doing what you're doing whilst you make a plan for the future? Yeah, Tyson, I recommend keep doing what you're doing. And the reason I recommend doing that is that it will give you some more data and analytics to guide you as you develop your plan. So what you're going to get a feel for is when people are reacting to your content, what content they're enjoying, who is already communicating with your organization. And that can be really helpful as you put a bit more structure in place. So it's okay to keep going and doing what you're doing currently because it will give you that information that can be really helpful. So that's the end of the formal questions. So thank you all so much for coming along today. I hope it's been really helpful. As I said at the start of the presentation, always happy to answer any questions that might come up further down the track. And I wish you all the best of luck as you develop your social media playbook and continue to communicate with your audiences online.
Anastasia, thank you so much. That's just been really, really interesting. I would have to say I'm not much of a social media person, and I found that really insightful and helpful. Thank you so much for your time, for such great responses to our questions, and for all of what you've shared. It's been really inspiring, and I'm sure that people will be able to take that information away and use it in a really practical way in their own organisations. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's great to have so many people online for this webinar. Don't forget to check out our program on the CLCQ website for upcoming webinars as well. So that's the end of today's session. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you online again soon. Cheers. Thanks so much.